Welcome back to Normalized PTSD. Yesterday we chatted with Mike, and today we're going to reach out to his wife. And she was a big reason why he was able to heal and get through the PTSD. It sounded like she might have even done a little poking to get him to that first therapy session. So let's see what else she has to offer and what other details she can share with how she was able to be a good support network. And here we go.
Pondered on a little bit.
Pondered on
So
them. You pondered on them,
yeah,
did you? Awesome. Well, we'll
exactly.
just start at the first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found yourself in a position to be a support structure for someone with PTSD.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's interesting because I grew up not around anybody associated with the military at all. So my husband was the first person that I was actually very close with that um, was in the military. I had a great uncle that was in the Navy back in the mid 60s, but we didn't talk about that stuff back then, and we
Right.
weren't that close. So, it's interesting. When he and I were first dating, just hearing stories and things like that. But it really wasn't until we got married and he was deployed to Iraq. Well, he actually was in Kuwait, but went over to Iraq for missions and such.
Right.
And once he came home, until I really experienced uh, being around someone who was, had some PTSD issues. And so, at first I didn't notice it at first. I could tell that he was real jittery and had a lot on his mind and things like
Right.
this. And just had a really hard time relaxing. And, I noticed things like, we'd go to a restaurant and he wouldn't sit with his back to the door.
Right.
And, just random stuff like that I did not notice before.
Mm.
I think the worst part of it was it got to be where we every night when we'd go to bed, he'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning every single night and get out of the
Mm.
bed and either go sleep on the couch or go sleep in the guest room. And I was kind of like, what is going on? Is there
Right.
something else going on? I was worried at first that he had some kind of issue with me. Obviously, that wasn't it.
Right.
Because then he and I ended up talking about it, and basically what he told me was that he was having the same dream every single night at the same time, and the ending was different. Some nights everything would be fine, and some nights it wasn't fine. And so some nights he'd make it, sometimes he didn't make it. And so, it's scary, and having
It
to
is.
think about that you can't even get your sleep because these things are in your mind. And for me as a spouse, I have never gone through that. I've never had to deal with things like that, but I didn't know how to help him. I mean,
Right.
you get to a point where it's like has to be miserable for him. He was tired all the time, and just it, it really for a while, just a kind of a different person.
Right.
And he, I don't think he really felt like he could talk to me about it because I didn't get it, and then I felt bad as the spouse that
Because
I
you
couldn't
want to
help.
help. Yeah. When you see someone you
I
love
want
and
to
care
help.
about, you're like, I want to fix it. I want to
Yeah,
be there and make it better.
I wanted to fix it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there was nothing at that time. I was like, I don't know what to do.
Mm.
And then I started feeling worried or concerned for myself. Like the person that I love is going through something major in his life, and there's nothing I can do to help.
Right.
And so I've gone to therapy for years for my own stuff, and so that actually was one of the things that I did end up talking a lot to her about was that
Okay.
and how to
When
help
you were talking
how to
to
help
her,
him.
Okay. I was just going to ask, when you were talking to her, was it a little bit about how, like, I know that I've been in situations in relationships where my actions negatively impact the relationship. So I was in therapy where we were getting help for that, as well as it sounds like you were getting help
Yeah.
on how to be a better spouse. And that's something I'd really like to hit on.
Right.
And like, I feel like there's a lot of people, men, women, that are, with a spouse that are like, hey, how can I be better? And like, what were some things that you were able to figure out to be more supportive for him in that situation?
Well, one of the things was not taking it personally. The
Okay.
fact of him getting out of the bed every night and going to sleep somewhere else. That is how he dealt with his dreams and all that, because he said at that point that he no longer felt like his bed was safe because
Right.
that dream had happened there and he had to go to another place. And for me, I had to realize that's not about me,
Yeah.
and to not bother him about it, not complain or make him feel bad about doing what he needed to do to feel safe.
Right.
And so, so I didn't say anything else about it. I just kind of had to understand that he's dealing with something that I know nothing about, and he's doing the best he can. And so, I mean, that was the main thing for us,
Hmm.
was that situation. And, and just be understanding, when he needs to talk to his friends, if he needs to go hang out with, he's got a couple of his good Air Force friends that were living in town at the time.
Right.
And some still in and out, but if he needs to go, they go. I don't want to go hang out in that group, because a lot of times, I mean, I do in a larger
Right.
hanging, fun sense or whatever, but sometimes they just need to go because they are the only ones that understand it, and the
Yeah.
only ones that they can talk to about it with, and just giving him the space to do that. Yeah, just being able to give him the space to do that.
I chat with a lot of my buddies, especially recently, about, things that benefit them. And like the most common thing expressed is just communication with other people that have been through certain
Yeah,
situations like that. And it's not so much
yeah,
always just talking about the old days, or, the war stories and stuff like that.
right.
Sometimes it's just being in an environment with someone who's been through it, because I feel like there's like
Yeah,
this comfortable feeling where
yep,
you can let loose a little bit and no one's going to be upset with you, because we all understand, we all get it, and it's
yeah,
okay to be a little bit silly. Sometimes it's okay to be aggressive. It's like shit.
yeah.
Let it out, because then they go home feeling happier and better about that situation, or better in general.
Exactly. And yeah. And I've noticed that after, sometimes he'll go hang out with a couple buddies or whatever. And then when he comes back, he just seems a lot calmer.
Yeah.
And that's really been very helpful for him, is, to have those friends. And, honestly, I feel like to him, his friends are his family,
Right. Yeah.
So,
No.
and that's one of the things, I just let him do that and not be one of those people that, you need to spend the time with us. And,
Right.
he's trying to, that's how he takes care of his mental health, and is to be able to have that. And so, I think that's, those two things are the main things, is just to not be on him about how he deals with his PTSD issues, because he's doing the best he can.
For the sleep thing, has he improved with sleeping? I talked to him the other day. He said he's gotten better. Okay. He talked to a therapist and gotten a little bit better, or insight on how to like make that improve. And that's awesome. Awesome news for
Yeah,
sure.
and I think he has. He did talk to someone, um, even I think it was just the one time. Like, he spoke to someone. It got to a point where he didn't
Right.
want to talk to anybody because of any backlash from the military that might come from it. And so he eventually did talk to somebody without getting into too much, but I think just that really helped him feel like I am not the only person that this happens to. Yeah, I'm not a broken person. Yeah.
I think we all have like a really good
Mm-hmm.
tight group, but I think some people out there don't have
Yeah.
that, and they do feel like they're unique and they're alone. When I feel like it's
Yeah.
the opposite. I feel like there's millions of people out there dealing with PTSD from trauma that they knowingly knew that they were going to be in situations that were going to be violent or
Yeah.
hostile, or you think about nurses, cops, the military, like especially combat veterans
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. It's like they know what they're getting into is going to be a bit dangerous, but I feel like it's just so avoided. The topic is avoided so much that people
Yeah.
hide it, and I don't think that there's easy resources to go out and get. And like, my dream is to have like some sort of nonprofit that's able to like, to give therapy
Yeah.
to these individuals and just be like, hey, it's all right, and they don't have to worry about the military
I
finding
know.
out and then now they
It's
can't deploy or they have to early
yeah.
retire,
Yeah.
or like cops, like there's no infrastructure in place for police officers. Like if they get in trouble with PTSD or have some sort of like negative mark, then they can't just go to another police station without that following them,
Right.
So it's like the benefits there for them
Yeah.
is not really there. It's just a real shame.
Yeah. It's kind of like
But
they don't want to talk about it because they don't want anybody at work to find out about it. And so then it's constantly in your mind, and you can't get better. You can't get better without getting some help sometimes. And, that's one of the things that I never really understood years ago before any of this was that, whether it's, nurses or policemen or combat veterans, that they don't encourage and give those people the tools to really help them in the situations that they were basically put into, and so
right.
yeah.
No, I agree. I feel like that stuff's not provided until you're
Yeah.
done, Like for my service, like God bless his soul, the air commander, old Jimmy, made me go talk to a counselor. And then that ultimately ended my career for
Mm-hmm.
deploying. They said that I couldn't deploy anymore. And I did the most rational, non-emotional thing ever, and I
Yeah.
quit, it was like weeks away from my reenlistment, and I just said I'm not going to reenlist anymore. And I became a contractor overseas doing the same thing, but making a lot
Yeah.
more money doing it. And it was just, I never got help, and it's because it was so taboo.
Yeah.
It was like it was seen as weakness, and it's been
And
seen as weakness since like the Spanish
it's
Wars.
not weakness.
It's,
And
I
it's
know it's really not. I think it's harder getting
yeah.
help than it is hiding it. Because if anything, you're hurting
Yeah.
so many people that way, and it's harder to swallow your pride than it is to pretend
Right.
nothing's wrong.
No, I completely agree. I agree.
So, other than speaking with your therapist to find ways to be more helpful and supportive, did you have like a support structure similar to what we have?
It's
Like, us combat vets, we chat it
I'll
up.
tell you honestly. This is and I told her um just the other day. So back at the time when Mike was deployed and when he first came back, and this was 5 or 6 years ago was his last deployment, but and it took him a couple of years to kind of get mostly to where he seemed a lot back to his prior self. But a
Right.
girl that I worked with, say a girl, I mean, she's obviously a woman, but in our office, her husband is a Army helicopter pilot, and he deploys a good bit. He's active duty and deploys a good bit. And she's my age. She was the only person that I knew who had, at the time, that had a husband that was deploying and had been deployed. And so she and I worked together, and but I called, she was the one that I called whenever like when he was deployed, if there were questions that I have, if I didn't know what, if I was just scared, I would call and talk to her. And even and then when Mike came back, I was the same thing. She was the one that I would call, because my other friends couldn't they couldn't understand. My friends who, live here in town, their husbands work at the bank or their investment people or whatever. They have no clue. And they're good at other types of conversations. But when it comes to dealing with your spouse having, PTSD, or telling you stories where they, were this close to not making it, or they were scared for their lives and all this other stuff, there's nobody I can talk to about that. So at that point I had her. Now I have, other friends who live in our neighborhood who have spouses in the military, and one who has a spouse that's a police officer and has gone through some PTSD issues in the past, that we can relate a lot on that. But that's just come with time, meeting, living where I live and meeting more people in that circle. Back then, none of my husband's friends were married to anyone, and so I really had no one to talk to except the one girl at work. But she, it's interesting because she and I still work for the same organization, and she is the head of our. We have a group at work called the Military Support Group, and it's for veterans and spouses. And she's the head of it for the whole organization. And so, but we worked in the same office back in the day. And so I still reach out and, just tell her, thank you so much for just being there for me back then. So I was lucky to have her, because otherwise I don't know how I would have really dealt with a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome news. It's good to know that there's organizations that are out there doing stuff like that, and maybe one day I can chat her up and
for sure.
If you were to do it all over again, like, and you had all the information you have now, what would you tell yourself before this journey started? Would you, like, what kind of insight? Because I am so grateful for people like you who, this isn't an easy situation to go through as a spouse, but to look for ways to be supportive during that, as well as not allowing, because we love what we did.
He still does.
He still does.
And he still loves it.
We love it.
He does.
Yeah. It's like, for us, it's easy as breathing. It's just something that we love to do, and it's something we're passionate about. And having a partner who's strong and willing to allow that person to go do these things that are dangerous as shit, but also be there to support him when he goes through the consequences of doing those things. That's really, it's awesome, and I want to thank you for that, for sure.
It's easy when you love the person. I mean, it's not easy, but I'm willing to do it because he's such a great person. And I just, I think, just thinking back, and I remember one of the first conversations he and I had when we were first, even when we were first dating. He's like, I'm going to probably get deployed in the next year. But he said, this, what I do, he's like, it's a service and it's a sacrifice. And I want you to know what goes into it. And if you are up for that, and and at the time I'm like, yeah, sure, of course, and then, but, I think, looking back is just to make sure that, I can never fix it for him, but just be there and be supportive and help him, know that we love him and that whatever he needs to get,
Right.
his self, get his mental health where it needs to be, and be relaxed and not. Yeah, that's what I want to do, and that's what I would say to myself then, and I'm going to say to myself again, because I'm sure that this is going to happen again. So, he's taken him a couple years to kind of get back to even keel, but it doesn't mean it's the last time. So he still deals with it here and there. So
Right. It's going to be something that's always going to be, there's going to be a fraction of it, I think. I'm hopeful, I think if we can break our minds, then hopefully we can fix them, and that's what I'm ultimately looking for with all of this, but we'll definitely see how we get down that path. But I was thinking about Mike, there's certain situations I've had personally where, if I wasn't 100% perfect, and then whoever I was with, my partner at the time, would then feel it was they had done something wrong, and it's
yeah.
really awesome that you can detach from those situations and realize that it's just him dealing with some of his shit, because that's definitely the hardest
Well,
part
yeah.
for me. It
And
was
honestly, yeah. And honestly, I learned that because when he first came back, I did think it was something about me because
right.
he would get out of the bed in the middle of the night, and I'm like, well, what did I do?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I realized that it was not me. And and the other thing is being able to have conversations and talk to him about things has really helped, because he likes to deal with serious things a lot of times with humor.
Yeah.
And and sometimes I'm like, that's really not that funny, but that's the way he deals with things. And I have to kind of realize that him, dealing with whatever's going on in his mind, and he doesn't think it's funny. He just, that's sometimes the way he copes.
Yeah, that's the way we process it. I was told the same by my therapist. She was like, I see that you use humor to process. And I was like, yes. She's like, it's not a bad way to do it. She's like, it's better than alcohol. And I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, she didn't know I was doing that too, though,
Yeah,
But
I know. I didn't tell you that part.
right. But no, I think that's one of the better ways to deal with it, and I feel like comedy in general is really positive for dealing with things that a lot of people don't want to talk about because it is super serious, and it kind of
Yeah.
gives it a spin and helps people, laugh about it and work through it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to throw out there?
Of course. I can't
Freaking,
think of anything right now.
no, it's all good. We'll think about so much afterwards, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah,
My goal
I
is get a
know.
little nugget from this person, a little nugget from that person, and eventually we'll be able to
Awesome.
have everything for everybody. And everybody's unique. There's going to be people in different situations where my perspective is not going to be relatable to them. And, maybe I have some other people that are coming on that are pretty eccentric and outside the box thinkers, so maybe something along that line is going to be helpful from them. But yeah, it's awesome. So now I'll just wrap it up.
Well,
And
hopefully it was helpful.
no, it's
Yeah.
so awesome. It's very helpful. I appreciate it so much, Sarah. And I hope you have a great evening and enjoy your weekend.
And we're going to wrap it up there. That was Sarah. I hope you guys enjoyed the perspective of a spouse. I found it really informative and interesting, as well as I learned a few things new. Hopefully the banjos playing in the background weren't too distracting. You get two Southern people talking together. Those words will just mash right together. Anyways, hope to see you guys next week. Alrighty, bye.